toxic, may be absorbed through skin to produce hemolytic anemia and kidney damage, evidenced by paleness and possibly red coloration of the urine. Vapors and or aerosols which may be formed at elevated temperatures may cause systematic effects. Chronic effects, overexposure by inhalation and or dermal contact may result in damage to the blood and kidneys. Prevent liquid from entering sewers, water courses, or low areas contain spilled liquid. Okay, so we're putting something into the water that is more toxic than the oil. We're sending our fishermen out there and cleanup workers. Some of these people are volunteers. They're not getting paid a cent, into areas where this is all going on. And these people are not being given respirators. They're not being given the proper protective clothing. In fact, when they questioned whether they should have respirators, they said, no, they don't need respirators. They're fine. They don't need them. When they disagreed and they got a group of people who are nonprofit to earn the money, buy the good respirators, and then wear them to work, they were told, let me see, I wrote it down, they would be removed from the job if they wore them. Now that's not fired, because then they could go back and say, well, they were fired for,
they would just be removed from public view.
Right, they would be removed from the job.
Right.
You know, I mean, this is ridiculous. These people are going out there, they're risking their lives. They don't really want to be doing this to begin with.
Well, what was that thing you mentioned before about balloons?
Oh, yes. I was given a little video this morning. The girl's name is Kendra Arneson. She's a commercial fisherman's wife. She's kind of like I am, but she's actually gotten much more involved because they've been into it more. She has been very involved.
Can I take a picture of your two daughters?
Sure. Yeah, I've got my two daughters here, 8-year-old Mandy and 16-year-old Sarah.
Because I want people to understand that the kinds of people that are influenced are everybody out there.
Yes, my boys also. I have an 18-year-old son, Matthew, and a 12-year-old son, Jesse, and they are commercial fishermen, third generation. Jesse is really having a hard time with all this because he knows his time hasn't even come up yet, and he may not be able to fish in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
I've homeschooled them for years, and this year in May, when I realized what was happening, I actually sent him out on the boat early and allowed him to go ahead and stop school for the time being and go out and fish, because I do believe that we're at the end of our industry in Florida.
And it's funny, Riki Ott said she knows some families, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but at least some families up in Alaska that are fishing, and that they can go up there and fish. She'll see if she can get them fit in there.
Well, we've talked about that. We've actually talked about moving to Alaska. It's a painful thing for my kids. I mean, my 16-year-old daughter has a boyfriend that lives locally.
Well, and don't forget, this is Florida.
Yeah.
Florida and Alaska are day and night.
Oh, definitely, like day and night, like moving to the other side of the world.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we'll go wherever God sends us. That's
like going from Hawaii to the South Pole.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it would be a really tough thing for all of us. I think it's tough when you realize that, you know, this was a man-made thing, and you know, I really would like to know what happened that day, and you know, at this point, they have not been able to give an explanation as to what happened.
Tell me about the balloons and the.
Well,
just in the middle of that. The reason I brought that thing up is for another reason. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, basically, there's this person that I was starting to tell you about. She's been kind of on the inside. She's been looking at the meeting. She's been around everything that's going on the inside scoop. You know. Basically back there with the BP people and the cleanup people. She's not part of the cleanup, she's just been able to kind of be there. She said she was hearing ponies and balloons, and she thought, what in the world is that? I think she states on there, the only thing I know about ponies and balloons is what I learned at the circus. You know, I see them at the circus. Well, she quickly learned what it was, and that's when, you know, a representative's coming in, or, you know, the president, or a congressman, or the news, CNN. Suddenly, everybody goes into action. What she's saying is that 75% of the people that they're seeing on CNN and that the president's seeing and all that those people, once all clear and the person is left, disappear. They're not doing anything.
So they're putting on the three-ring circus, or the dog and pony show just for the media.
Yeah,
they are.
And that's what it seems to be. And
that's what they call public relations, but it's not really good public relations.
No, it's not. And you know, my big concern is what's going on over there eventually will come into here. I mean, we may not have, I want to talk to you about that dispersed oil a little bit. You know, I was reading a little bit about these dispersants. What's happening is the reason that they're using these dispersants, I mean, people are like, okay, it's just taking care of it. The dispersants are taking the oil and it's breaking it down, but it's still there. It becomes dispersed oil, and they have confirmed now scientifically that there are these big plumes down there. Now the plumes are the broken down oil. Now it looks sort of like a big cloud. And what's happening is it's this broken down oil, it's still there.
Right.
But CBP doesn't want people to see as much oil on the surface.
So for public relations, it looks better
Right.
on top, but it's
Well-
a column of dispersant plus oil, and the oil itself is, they say
Well, it's
now.
dispersed oil is what it is, and it goes into the water column, so it's affecting a lot more than just the surface stuff.
Right.
The dispersants are very dangerous, they're
Yes.
very toxic, and actually what's happening to our commercial fishermen out on these boats is that they're spraying these dispersants, it's blowing through the wind, and then numerous cases of people getting sick on boats. They're getting headaches, nausea, vomiting,
Yeah.
dizziness, feeling very
It's
uncoordinated.
gotta
They're
be like
getting
being
ill.
sprayed with bug spray.
They're getting very ill, and what I wanted to touch on too was that they found it very interesting. OSHA exempts cold and flu from having to be treated. And what we're finding interesting is
But it's
colds,
not a cold
flu.
or the flu.
Right, they're saying it's colds, flu, and food poisoning.
And therefore, it's not,
And therefore, they don't have to cover
It's
it,
not
they don't
anything.
have to treat it, and therefore dispersants and oils still do not cause harm or long-term
and the
harm.
clinics that Exxon set up were set up by Exxon, and they're the ones that said, oh, these people can go, that's just a cold or a
They're-
flu.
Right, they're fine. But
So-
one thing I was able to speak to Lisa Marie this morning is that they went back 13 years after the Exxon Valdez spill, and they spoke with each of these people that did cleanup, and 1/3 of the people, okay,
That study was done by
There was approximately-
Princeton.
right, approximately 11,000 people did cleanup, okay? 1/3 of them, 13 years later, I'm gonna repeat that, 13 years later, still had symptoms that they had at that time.
Right.
See, what happens with these dispersants in oil is that they attack the nervous
Well,
system.
couldn't it just be a very bad cold that lasted 13 years?
I would highly doubt that. I mean, that would need to be studied all by itself if something like that was going on. But, you know, I think it's just like a big cover-up. You know, that if they say that this is what's going on, then they have to, you know, provide these respirators, then all of a sudden they're liable, so that if people get sick, they're gonna have to go back and these people can sue them later. So what they did was they turned around, let me find the page here. Hang on a sec. They turned around and they asked them to sign releases when they realized that there was something going on. This is out in the Valdez in Alaska, to make it clear.
Yeah.
This is page 33 of her book. It shows Exxon's partial release form for indemnity from the adverse health effects from the cleanup work. So what they did was, for in consideration of the sum of $600.50 paid to the undersigned, basically they don't have to be liable and they cannot be sued for it. Now, the reason it was $600.50, just to show you how devious this was, is because anything over $600, okay, $600.50 has to be reported to the IRS. If somebody came back and tried to sue them because they got cancer, long-term harm, you know, respiratory damage, whatever, they would have proof very easily on their taxes that they received this money and that they signed this form and that they don't have to do anything about it.
Therefore, there's a waiver that they signed.
There was a
Exactly.
waiver, so, and the reason that they had them sign
It's
that
all
waiver,
officially documented.
right, was April 1989, Dr. Robert Rigg, former Alaska medical director, warned it is a known fact that neurological changes, brain damage, skin disorders, including cancer, liver, and kidney damage, cancer of the other organ systems, and medical complications secondary to exposure to, working unprotected or inadequately protected, which is still going on here 21 years later, can and will occur to workers exposed to crude oil and other petrochemical byproducts, while short-term complaints, in other words, skin irritation, nausea, dizziness, pulmonary symptoms, etc., may be the initial signs of exposure and toxicity. The more serious long-term effects must be prevented. He recommends pulling cleanup crews off the beaches and out of the sound to avoid further tragedy in the form of human suffering and illness.
Wow.
John Havelock, a former Attorney General for Alaska, warned that we cannot continue to have Exxon and its
And they're telling
contractors
these guys that they can't wear
substituted.
those masks or they'll be removed from the
Right.
job.
Well, listen to this. This is former Attorney General for Alaska. He said, we cannot continue to have Exxon and its contractors substituted for the state in taking responsibility for the recovery. A person run over by a drunken driver does not hand over to that driver the primary responsibility for determining the type of medical treatment, the hiring of the doctor, and the determination of therapy. So yes,
That's right.